I'm glad to introduce Mr. Anas Al-Hamous that's going to talk about tax in the UK, employment taxes.
If someone is employed and he wants to claim some expenses that are any professional expenses or any travel expenses that the employer did not cover or did not pay him while he was employed, up to £2,500, he can fill in a form called P47 form, where he can put his expenses and proof of expenses to reduce the taxes and ask for a repayment of tax if he was overtaxed because he did not incount these expenses while he was working for that employer. Okay. Now, some expenses such as travel expenses, capital allowances, also subsistence expenses. So basically, travel expenses. Some employers pay the employee travel expenses up to 45 pence per mile. Okay, but the rule says is that these expenses have to be wholly and necessary and exclusively for the business, for the purpose of business. Okay, under either under employment or under self-employment. If you were self-employed and let's say if you were a doctor and traveling between hospitals and traveling between clinics, you can claim these expenses on your self-assessment, providing that these expenses are only for business, are only for the purpose of going from one clinic to another or going from one hospital to another. Now, this is called a business journey, or this is a business purpose. Now, if there was an ordinary commuting or a personal commuting, this is where if you only work in one place, one employer, one place, one contract, if you travel from your home to the place of work and then from the place of work back to your home on a regular basis and on a steady fast, so every day from home to work, from work to home, you're not allowed to claim these expenses. Okay, you're only allowed to claim expenses if you were traveling from, let's say, home to work and then from work to a temporary place of work and then from that temporary work of place to your home. So you will be allowed to claim the mileage from the first place of work to the second place of work and from the temporary place of work to your home. Okay, but not from your home to your first place of work. Okay, so you can also claim some meals and food. Now this comes under the subsistence allowable expenses. You can only claim if you are away from home on a business journey or on a journey that it is not an ordinary journey for 5 or more hours. If you are doing 5 hours, you'll be allowed to claim £5. If you are working from 5 to 10, you're allowed to claim £10. Over 10 hours, you can claim £25. Okay, and the employer will pay you these amounts. You can claim them on your expenses without paying any national insurance or any tax on these amounts. So basically, if you work in one place and you have left that place to work somewhere else, the former employer will give you a P45 form. This P45 form will state your tax code, will state your total income to date. Okay, it is specifically for the tax year that you were in, and it will tell you how much tax you have paid, and if you are due a refund, if you don't work somewhere else within the same year. And if you move to someone else, usually the new employer will give you a starter checklist. This starter checklist has questions in it, and it has statements that you need to pick up. You need to pick up one of these statements. Okay, you need to tick one of these statements. It is either statement A or B or C, and depending on your answer, this will allow the new employer to figure out your tax code, whether to continue on the previous tax code, whether to put you on an emergency tax code, or whether to put you on a basic rate tax code. Okay, so the tax code for this year, for 2021, is 1250L. This is usually everyone is on 1250L unless there's some circumstances, unless he's claiming, let's say, a marriage allowance, or unless he has any outstanding tax liabilities that are being deducted from his PAYE code. Then it will be affected, or if he's working somewhere else. So if he has two jobs, then that might be his second job, and he might have a BR code, basic rate code, on his new employment. So the statements ask you whether this is your first job within the tax year, or whether you were employed before and you do not have the P45 from your previous employer, or whether you are employed now and you have another employment at the same time. So the statement A, whether this is your first employment in the tax year, they will usually put you on a code 1250L, which is the 12,500 personal allowance. It has not been used within the tax year, so you are allowed to claim the full personal allowance. So unless your income exceeds 12,500, you will start paying tax of 20%. If not, then you won't be paying tax. You will only be paying national insurance contribution. Okay. Now, statement B asks you whether you have moved from another employer, whether you were employed within the same tax year and now you have stopped employment and you are starting a new employment, and you do not have the P45. If you do not have the P45 and you were employed with a previous employer, the new employer will assume your tax code to be the 1250L, but he will put you on a week one month one code, which means it's an emergency code, which means he will keep deducting taxes if you were as if you were employed with him from the start of the year. Okay. Now the final one, which is statement C, which is if you have two employments in the same year, or three employments, the first employment will mainly be using your usual tax code 1250L. So it will be using your personal allowance, and the second employment will basically put you on a basic rate tax code. Okay, BR tax code, which means anything you earn in the second employment will be taxed straight away without any personal allowance. So will be taxed 20%, and then you will receive the net of that. Okay. So this is basically for the tax codes. These are a small introduction on how a new employer will decide what your tax code is. You can also find a lot of explanations on what each tax code means on HMRC website. So if you just type on Google understand my tax code, you will go to HMRC and you will find a list of codes that will tell you each code, what does it mean. Now, if you were entitled for a payment of termination after, let's say if your employment was terminated for some reason that you don't think is correct, and you were entitled for a termination of employment, that is also something that that might affect your tax code. Okay, usually there is an allowance for the termination payment around £30,000 for the termination of employment. Now, if you were to receive any kind of benefits in your employment, so if you had a contract with your employer of benefiting from a car at employment, there is also a benefit in kind tax. So this might also affect your tax code in your employment, and it will affect your taxes during the year. And also, on top of this, if you were paid by your employer and more than the allowable mileage by HMRC. So the allowable mileage by HMRC per mile is 45 pence. If you had a generous employer and he would pay you 60 pence per mile, this extra 15 pence per mile will be taxable on top of your income. Okay, but rarely any employers pay that amount.
Thank you for listening, and we hope to see you in the next session. Don't hesitate to follow us on our social media platforms as seen on this screen. For more updates and information on the Egyptians Together Union, please visit our official website on www.egyptianstogether.com. Also, for any questions or queries, please contact us via email on egyptianstogetheruk@gmail.com. Also, for more videos, please subscribe to our YouTube channel called Egyptians Together. Thank you for listening, and we hope to see you in the next session.